know full well that permanent residency was never and certainly isn't a, guaranteed thing when you study in Canada. Permanent residency was never guaranteed. Those who say that, this is a surefire way of doing it, I would say turn around and run. No one can guarantee that for you. The best way you can protect yourself is by laying out a concrete plan and have multiple options.
Everyone, welcome back to the channel. Happy New Year, new immigration policies. And of course, today we are joined by our immigration lawyer who helped us become Canadian permanent residents in under 2 years. And of course, we are now Canadian citizens because of his help and guidance. Welcome back to the channel. As always, attorney Lou Dangzalan. Lou, how are you doing?
Hey, Daniel, Happy New Year. What's going on?
Happy New Year. Everything's going well. I know on your end things are probably getting updated every other week, and we'll share that with the rest of our viewers for today. So for today, Lou, let's get right into it. This video will be split into two parts, and if you're watching this video, check the timestamps below. First part is all about for those individuals who want to immigrate to Canada. The second part would be for those who have partners, spouses, or families. Okay, so we'll split that into two parts. Lou, let's go first for individuals, right? So, in terms of immigrating to Canada, maybe even through study permit, have there been any major changes announced in the previous weeks? And what are those changes that people should know?
In the previous weeks, it's less so much about announcements, but what the government is doing. So, as a lot of people know, the government of Canada has enacted and put in place changes in the international study program or international student program, rather, that has made it far harder than it used to be for a lot of people to self-select out of Canada. Essentially, they put up barriers. They wanted to make sure that people have the necessary finances, raising it from 10,000 to now 20,000 and change, inclusive of payment for the first year of your studies in Canada. They've also restricted I guess, like the viability of kind of making that argument that your spouse is accompanying, they're going to be working. In theory, it was never really allowed, but we do know that a lot of people have used that as an anchor, sort of as an argument that they would have the money. It's all in the hypothetical, and they've gotten away with it, but now they've become very strict about it. And then, of course, there's the provincial attestation letters that, and on top of the applications for study permits, people now have to include, apart from the letter of acceptance, now a letter of attestation from the province or the territory to which they're applying. Basically, we also seen in the initial phase, a certain number was provided. So essentially, they created slots. And then in the succeeding phases, we've also seen a reduction in the number of provincial attestation letters that were being issued by each jurisdiction. This mainly followed the demand because we did see a tanking in the numbers of enrollment, for example, in first of all, private career colleges, second, even in public colleges, and to a certain extent to universities as well. So these are the changes for international students. For the temporary foreign worker programs, we've also seen a lot of changes that would affect the easiness, shall we say, of obtaining a work permit. As you know, in order to get a work permit, you must have the support of an employer through a labor market impact assessment. And they've made the requirements for applying for a labor market impact assessment depending on what type of job you're applying to, where you're applying at, and essentially, if your wages are going to be at the, let's say, at the below the median amount that a particular occupation is making. So, say, for example, if you're in the area of Toronto and you're applying, let's say, as a bartender, you're trying to sponsor a bartender in as an employer, and you're going to pay them, let's just say, hypothetically, $18 an hour, which would be at the median, just as an example as an income per hour, right? And if you don't pay them 18 and you're in a region where the unemployment rate is higher than 6%, basically they've suspended processing those LMIAs. So if you want to continue with that, you need to pay more, or you need to wait for the unemployment numbers for that particular region to go down. So there's a lot of like small changes here and there, recalibrations, as I like to call them. And I don't expect them to stop. Although the Minister for Immigration, Mark Miller, had mentioned just a few days ago that they intend to kind of like take it easy with changes to international students program, which is good news for a lot of folks. But as you've seen in the last couple of days, there were announcements relating to uh, work permits that would be issued to spouses of international students, as well as to holders of work permits such as PGWPs or skilled workers themselves, which is a nice segue to the second part of this discussion, right? Because as of January 21st, what's going to happen is folks who have a spouse or a common law partner accompanying them, and let's say, for example, you're an international student or a foreign worker who secured a labor market impact assessment backed work permit. In your situation, in the land before January 21st, in theory, you could have your spouse accompany you to Canada, and they would get an open work permit. But they've started to kind of like tighten that as well. What's going to happen as of January 21st is that international students must now follow the requirements set by the government, specifically with respect to the type of program that the international student is pursuing. So, folks who are pursuing master's programs that are at least 16 months or longer would be eligible to have their spouse or common law partner accompany them, and they would get an open work permit. Students who are pursuing doctoral programs, check, or those who are following a program that would be a selected eligible occupation or profession. Um, the final list for that has not been released yet, and we expect the government of Canada to come out with that list sooner rather than later, hopefully before the 21st, when all these changes are actually rolled out. Now, the second part of that is that those who are holding work permits, such as postgrad work permits, those who've completed their studies in Canada, let's say, for example, they get their PGWP, they want their spouse or common law partner to continue to stay with them in Canada on an open work permit. This work permit holder, primary applicant that is, they need to hold a tier 0 or tier 1 occupation, or they could hold tier 2 or 3 occupations in sectors where there is a labor shortage, or if these occupations are pre-identified by the government. Again, that list is going to come out, but in broad strokes, 0 generally denotes that these are managerial roles, right? Tier 1 typically requires a university education, such as a full bachelor's, for example. So those who are registered nurses or those who are lawyers, doctors, engineers, for example, will fall under tier 1. For tier 2, these could be people who are skilled, for example, but not necessarily holding a full bachelor's. For example, licensed or what do you call those again? The licensed practicing practical nurses, for example, in the province of British Columbia, or the RPNs, registered practical nurses in the provinces of Ontario, who would have completed a 2-year program in practical nursing, for example. They would fall under tier 2. But if they're a tier 2, you now have to pay attention. Do you actually fall into that list that the government will now, require you to be in order to have your spouse or partner qualify for an open work permit, right? So a lot of it remains to be seen. The announcement is coming on the 21st. I'm not sure when this video is going to come out, but if it does come out after the 21st, I'm sure that Daniel will include a link to the list of these occupations below to this video. One more thing that we need to be mindful of is for those who have, the principal work permit holder. and if they want to get their spouse or their partner to come with them, is that their permit must be valid for at least 16 months. So those, for example, who pursued 1 year program that somehow qualified for a post-grad work permit of 1 year, you're out of luck. You need to qualify for a work permit first that is a minimum of 16 months in order to have an open work permit for your spouse or partner to be issued in their favor. So that's a very important distinction. And yeah, so far these were the changes that were announced for 2025.
Ooh, that is a lot. That is a lot. It seems like when Bea and I were navigating these conditions, it was something that you can just Google, you can just do it on your own and be fairly confident that you're gonna get to your goal. But from what I've heard from you, it seems like applicants now really need just professional help just to ensure that they actually get to their goals here in Canada. So what we did was we partnered up with Lou and his team at LJD Law to give you some discounted consultations. I'll link that in the description below. And Lou, what should they expect in these consultations with you?
Yeah, they'll basically, depending on what their issues are, we'll dive deep into them and try to offer solutions to them. They might have simple questions, but for some reason, sometimes, as we know, even government websites are kind of hard to navigate. And case in point is this particular site that talks about eligibility for open work permits. If you look at this, when they look at the section for who can apply, you'll see that they've categorized the applicants into four categories. And of course, inside each one of these drill down menus, you'll have subconditions. So all that to say is that, things are starting to get really complicated and, questions may seem simple, but then the answers need to be complicated. That's where we come in. That's where we try to be the hot knife that slices through the thick butter of a mess that IRCC has provided us in their policy changes in the last 18 to 24 months.
Thank you so much. So click that link in the description below. And as of now, you have $100 off from the consultation fee. And then you can be guided accordingly. Okay. Lou, let's backtrack a bit. You mentioned, let's talk about the spouses one. You mentioned it's just now masters or doctorate programs that they can bring their spouses to Canada for open work permit. How about those programs which are outside of this? Let's say you just have, a 2 year 2 year program in marketing, just 2 year program and just outside of, what's recommended. Is that
Uh,
basically a no-go for them?
Oh, that's a very, very good question, I would say. And what I would like to do is I'd like to look at the announcement from January the 14th. And basically, what you talked about is correct. So this part here, where the government said that family open work permits would be limited to spouses of international students who are enrolled in master's programs that are 16 months or longer, doctoral programs, or select professional and eligible programs. The problem with select eligible professional and eligible programs is that the government has not yet announced this. They did link to this particular page, so people need to watch this space. And as I mentioned and I showed earlier, you'll see that basically they've categorized the applicants here, right? So those who basically filed their application, say for example, to date, before the announcement was made, or even before the changes that were announced are to take effect, which is to say January 21st, they're safe. They're going to fall under the existing rules. But again, there's like subcategories to that. But generally speaking, they would fall in here, right? So they need to be like in a PGWP eligible institution. They need to have a valid study permit. They need to attend a college or university. And then the spouse or common law partner must provide evidence that they were enrolled full time and a copy of the study permit. So that seems simple. But then when it comes to the eligible programs, they have not yet published that as of recording. However, there is an indication here that we can probably use as guidance, and this is working in Canada as an international student. Why I like to look at this is because if you recall, there were changes in 2024, which basically, limited eligibility to post-grad work permits to, people who would finish DLIs or particular programs only. What we've seen is that there are field of study requirements that are now set into play. Now, for example, one way to look at that in terms of like eligibility is that you want to look at folks who are applying for study permits now, they need to be strategic in their program choices, right? Because it affects their PGWP eligibility. So even if we don't have a list as of recording today, and that list should come out at least at the latest on the 21st, it would be logical to follow the trends that IRCC have set up because they've kind of started to align on labor market needs. And what they have right now for international students to qualify for PGWPs is that graduates of bachelor's degrees, master's, or doctoral degrees, they're safe. If you graduate from a program offered by a university, you might qualify, but there is a field of study requirements. Those who finish two-year programs, such as yourself, Daniel, Bea as well, they basically now need to also follow the field of study requirements. And what does that mean? So if you click that link on IRCC's website right now, it actually mentions the areas of priorities. So that includes agriculture and food, education, healthcare, no surprises there. STEM, certainly no surprise there. Trade and transport. And in fact, they've added this tool here that lists 989 uh, fields of studies, essentially, that you can pursue, generally speaking, that even if it's a two-year program or a one-year program, you would still be eligible for a PGWP. And that aligns with the labor market priorities of Canada. It would not surprise me if the requirements set for the open work permits for spouses or common law partners of international students or foreign workers would follow that same trend, essentially. So we need to watch that space. There might be some changes here or there, but I would be surprised if they create a completely different list. I would imagine this would be aligned more or less.
Mm. Lou, thank you so much for the update. From what I'm hearing from you, this is definitely on a case by case basis, right? It's not anymore like, okay, this is my scenario. I can just look at the website on my own and just figure things out, right? Because there are some certain conditions based on that website that people might miss. Okay.
Mhm.
So, yep, click the link in the description below to get a consultation with Lou and his team. And Lou, I guess we'll close this by asking you whether it's individuals, whether it's couples or families, what would be your best advice for those who want to immigrate to Canada in the first quarter of 2025?
First quarter of 2025. That's a tough one. It depends. The first advice is know what your objectives are. Do you want to just come to Canada to study? That's fine. But you also want to preserve your options. You may want to preserve your options to work in Canada after your studies. After all, it's a really good way to gain foreign work experience for, you did spend a lot of time in Canada. You spent a lot of money there. You might as well get some work experience there. If you want to use this as your potential option or bridge to become a permanent resident, know full well that permanent residency was never and certainly isn't a guaranteed thing when you study in Canada. Permanent residency was never guaranteed. Those who say that, this is a surefire way of doing it, I would say turn around and run. No one can guarantee that for you. The best way you can protect yourself is by laying out a concrete plan and have multiple options, which is essentially what we have been doing for the last 12 to 18 months for a lot of folks these days. This is the bulk of my practice to date. We still help a lot of folks who do study permits, institutional clients, as well as individual clients. who seek help in terms of securing their first study permit, or for those who've been refused, for example, because we do know that immigration uses tools that may not necessarily, um, result into a positive outcome from both sides, really, because with the use of artificial intelligence, for example, in decision making, sometimes it's a hit or miss. And if you don't fit the mold, then it could be a problem. So come talk to us if you have any questions. We're happy to help.
Lou, thank you so much. And again, Lou is one of the best immigration lawyers right now. He's the one who helped Bea and I just achieve our dreams here in Canada, right? So click the link below, set that consultation time with Lou and his team. And Lou, thanks again for joining us. We'll see you real soon.
Thank you so much. And thanks for this opportunity, Davi. Have a wonderful day,
You too. Have
everyone.
a great day. Bye.